You know, if you had told me at the start of this year that I would have a channel that has over 1,000 subscribers at this point in the year, I probably would have looked at you weirdly and asked how the hell you got in my house. But here we are, 1,000. And as someone who has never had this many people watching their content before, I skipped over 100, 250, 500 because they all happened so incredibly quickly. But 1,000? I'm not missing that. I'm aware that 1K is a huge milestone, and it's something I don't take for granted at all. I feel so incredibly lucky to have hit this milestone, and I am hugely appreciative of every single one of you for being here. So today, I wanted to take the opportunity to answer a question that I get asked a lot. Why are you the way that you are? I mean, how do you make your videos? Yes, my lovelies, today I'm going to walk you through every step of making an episode of the war-torn task of 100% completing Battle for Azeroth from start to finish. To do this, I'm going to go through in detail every stage of the video process so you can see what I do at each stage and how I make the decisions that I do. In addition to this, I also posted on my community post tab here on YouTube and on my Discord asking if you have any questions about how I make my videos, so I'll be answering those as well as and when they come up. But before we do that, I want to give you a history lesson. Approximately 14 billion years ago, there was a big bang. Skip forward a bit to 1999 AD, I was born. Then skip forward a bit less time to 2012, I was let loose on the internet at the age of 13, and nothing was the same ever again for the poor souls that were immediately traumatized by having to even deal with me at that age on the internet. I was a mess, I'm sorry. 2012 is an important year as it was the year that I got my first ever smartphone. At the time, it was a basic Alcatel Android phone with the Vodafone name slapped on it like they'd copied their homework or something. The thing about Android phones even then was that to even get into it, you needed a Google account, and with a Google account comes a YouTube account. And with a 13-year-old who has an Android phone, which means they have a Google account, which means they have a YouTube account, who had also discovered that YouTube had gaming videos and vlogs and liked the idea of making videos and being their own boss when they grew up, came one thought.
Hey, I want to be famous.
Oh yes, I was one of those kids. And thus began the next 14 years of my life in a weird relationship with content creation. I did shit phone vlogs for a year and then made awful Minecraft content on a Windows XP PC that could barely run Fraps stably until I got a more up-to-date PC, until in 2014, I deleted it all. Wait, what? See, the thing is, at the time, I couldn't keep my mouth shut about the videos I was making. I thought by telling people at school I would get a decent foundation for a subscriber base, which would then put my videos into the algorithm and push them out. Instead, what I got was bullying. Don't feel bad for me. If you saw those videos I was making at the time, you would have joined in. So in late 2014, I decided to do something drastic. After an incident in a business studies class where some people had bypassed the school's IT restrictions and got onto YouTube and were playing my videos out loud, I decided the best course of action was to delete everything. You know, not private them, just delete them. I never said I was a bright kid. However, I was stubborn and decided that instead of deleting the channel and calling it a day, I would start a brand new channel and not tell anyone except my closest friends who I knew wouldn't tell anyone. This way I would be able to carry on making content which I love doing and also avoid the cruel, unrelenting taunting of teenagers. Anyway, here's the first few seconds of the first video I posted on that channel.
Oh my god. Who the hell are you?
Oh, fuck me. Yes, what you just heard was me trying to do an Eric Cartman impression. I was 14, okay? Please, whatever awful comment you were about to write about that video, you are allowed to. Please, go ahead.
And you will respect my authority.
I made a variety of videos on that channel, mostly consisting of Minecraft, and of course, Minecraft. This was the case up until 2016, where in the new year, I decided to take my content in a different direction. Since around the time he uploaded his Crash Bash review, I had been, and still am, a huge fan of Cat Icarus. So around this time, I decided to give reviewing games in a comedy format a go. So after toiling away at the script, recording gameplay footage, making sure the voiceover was just right, editing it to the best of my ability in Sony Vegas, I made a just under 4-minute video reviewing Assassin's Creed Syndicate and gave it a 9 out of 10. Honestly surprised Kotaku never hired me. This video was total shit, and I won't subject you to any more of it because, dear God, I was such a dumb kid. But I wanted to take you back to what I said before. Yes, a lot of my creative influence derives from Cat Icarus. Firstly, if you're not watching Cat Icarus, then you're living your life wrong, which I'm pretty sure is a quote from Gandhi. I've watched his content for 14 years now, and I'm still very much a fan. Naturally, over time, when you watch a creator for so long and look up to them as an inspiration, you start to notice how you're taking these little nuggets of inspiration and influence and use them to better your own work. Back then, the biggest thing that I was inspired by in Caddy's work was his editing, and used that to look at my own content and think, right, what can I do here to make this more visually appealing? At the time, I was at college studying TV and film production and would then go on to uni to do the same, and I was being trained on Premiere Pro for editing, which I still use today. But more on that later. As the videos went on, the writing, recording, editing, all of that got much better for my standards at the time at least, and I was loving every second of it. In fact, to this day, I can see the foundations for how I produce content today starting to form in those older videos. Don't get me wrong, those videos are total shit, but the foundation is still there. Throughout 2016 and the first few months of 2017, I was pushing out different videos, some full reviews, some smaller content such as mobile game spotlights, discussions over certain gaming topics like Club Penguin closing down, but behind the scenes, something wasn't quite right. Part of the improvement in the quality of the videos was driven by my constant need to do better every time. I was always watching Premiere tutorials, watching other creators in the review space for inspiration, and ultimately in April 2017, it ended up being impossible for me to finish a video, as I would start writing it and end up hating the idea. Or I would get to the edit, start to get to the halfway mark and think it wasn't good enough and bin it off. Over time, this got worse and worse, and ultimately I declared that I was burnt out. From June to December 2017, I took a break to focus on my studies and work for a time, and then came back and produced some videos that to this day, I still think are pretty good. I didn't get a chance to play the PvE because you have to pay for it, and I'm currently very, very poor.
All around me are familiar faces.
Subject to jumping. Oh boy, Bubsy's jumping is very weird, to the point where if you jump on your own, you jump higher than the Empire State, but if you jump on something else, that's it, you're on bloody Mars. You can certainly see a shift in quality between pre-break and post-break on this channel. This carried on until 2018, when my university and work commitments meant I just didn't really have the time to make content as often as I used to. I still did, it just became few and far between. But then, COVID happened. We were locked down. I had finished uni and suddenly I had a lot more time on my hands. So during this time, I decided that I would fill the time with streaming on Twitch. I had been streaming since 2019 to fill in the gaps between content, and with lockdown forcing us all to stay at home, I decided to stream whenever I had the time. I was still working, as the hotel I was working at the time was the only one open in the area for key workers, otherwise I likely would have been trying to make content as well, but I was still working 40 hours a week. And that went very well. When I ended that channel in 2024, I had over 300 followers, was getting at least an average viewership between 5 to 10, and my two rebrands into a PNG tuber and VTuber were received very well. And then I got gaslit and manipulated. My VTuber model artists at the time essentially tried to gaslight me into commissioning work more from them, which led me to resent everything to do with content. So once again, I quit. And when I did, they tried to make me pay them £1,000 for leading them on, when I never said I was hiring them. And that's why my Discord account is only 2 years old, because like Sylvanus, I decided to burn it! So how did we get here? Well, despite not making content anymore, I still very much watched it, and I was playing a lot of WoW as I had been since 2014. Around this time, I was really getting into completionist content, which is when the series Expansion Locked by Shax was suggested to me. It was around episode 4 that I came across the series, and the seed was planted in my head to try and do something similar, but without the content. I never started it really, but in April 2026, the content bug had bitten once again. Tanza had been a thing for about half a year at this point. I had made the account on Twitch and YouTube around the time of the Midnight reveal, as I wanted to stream my reaction to it and see if I could give it another go, but a bit more low-key, but never really did anything past that point. But that month, I was itching to get back into streaming in the video world, and the only thing I wanted to do was an expansion challenge. One evening, I was watching one of Shax's streams and decided to email him asking for permission to do my own version of Expansion Locked and make content out of it. On stream, Shax very kindly said yes, and thus the war-torn task was born.
1 month later, the first episode comes out, and 2 weeks after that, it blows up, and here we are now. Right, well, now that I've bored you all to death with the history of me, let's make a video, shall we? Let's start from the very beginning of every War-Torn Task episode, which is the streams themselves. Every War-Torn Task video takes 3 to 4 streams to make the 25-ish minutes of chaos and bad jokes that you all seem to like. Typically, I try to release these every other Wednesday and take the Thursday through to Sunday afterwards off to distance myself and come back to the next video on Monday refreshed and not hating myself. This is where I'd like to answer the first 2 questions I received. Bacon2243 asked, do you write the script before you make and edit the video or write as you go? And Danish Diana, a longtime viewer and friend, asked, how do you know what part of the streams to use? Do you have a sort of timestamp or do you just click around different parts of the stream until you find what you need? So this is how I write my scripts. On the Monday, I will sit down at my desk, AirPods in, coffee in hand, or gin depending on how many people have had to stifle my screams at that day, and open up the first VOD that I'll be using for that particular video. This single action kicks off a 10-day timer in my head, which leads up to the next scheduled release. Now I must stress this 2-week release cadence is not set in stone, and I always say that it's every 2 to 3 weeks to allow myself extra time if needed. This extra time can typically be needed if I'm on holiday, traveling away for work, or have needed to take some extra time away from making the video for some reason until I'm ready to come back to it. So far I've managed to be fairly consistent with the 2 weeks, but that extra week is always there in case I need it. The way I write the War-Torn Task is likely not the most efficient way of doing it. I'm fully aware of this. I will take one of the VODs and set the playback speed to 2 times. I will then watch the entire VOD and make timestamp notes on this spreadsheet of everything that happened in that VOD, items, funny moments, something I've said that I think might fit the script. If I can make something from that moment in the script, it goes on the log. Once I finish one VOD's notes, I'll then take those and write that section of the script with them. So let's say, for example, episode 6 starts with day 16. Once I've gone through day 16 and made all the notes I want to make for that day, I will go into the ep 6 script and write it out. Once I've made a script section out of day 16, I'll then move on to day 17, make the notes again, write the script out of the notes, do day 18, etc, etc, etc. I write all of my scripts on Google Docs so that I can access them anywhere. The log spreadsheet I make my notes on are also on Google Sheets. You'll notice on the note spreadsheet as well that they're all formatted like this. This is a note for me in the edit, so I know exactly what day this clip relates to. So for example, having a timestamp D16 10:35 shows me that this clip is on day 16 and happened at 10:35. Is this the most efficient way of writing my videos? No. Is there better ways of doing it? Yes. Do I have poor time management? Yes. But this is, again, for me, the most comfortable way that I have found in order to efficiently write everything and get everything that I want in the script. My streaming setup has basically been the same for the last 5 years. I use OBS Studio to stream, which is still sort of new to me as I used to use Streamlabs OBS. Personally, if you're looking to get into streaming yourself for the first time, I would recommend Streamlabs OBS as it's a lot more beginner friendly and is great for throwing something together and working with their plugins. The reason that I use OBS Studio though is because of the multi-streaming capabilities. I stream to both YouTube and Twitch, and Streamlabs OBS does have this capability baked in, but it's part of their subscriptions. So a few days into starting the War-Torn Task live, I made the switch to OBS Studio and used the Stream Elements multi-stream plugin. This allows me to view multiple chats, edit both stream titles as I'm going live, see combined activity feeds, and has worked a charm for me since I started using it. It was also a no-brainer for me to use the Stream Elements tool, as I also use them for my alerts and chatbot too. For the actual setup itself, this is my baby. I've had this PC for just over 5 years now, and it's served me very, very well. Don't get me wrong, it is starting to show its age, especially since I upgraded my main monitor to a 4K one, and the GPU I have isn't really supposed to do that. It's a custom built machine from Chillblast, who I would highly recommend if you're after a custom spec PC in the UK, from the options that were available to me when building it, which was during the great Nvidia card drought of 2021. Now I'm about to go into some technical bits, so bear with me if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, because I really don't. Okay, this PC has a Gigabyte Z490 Gaming X motherboard with an Intel i7-10700K CPU at 3.8 GHz, 16 CPUs, 16 GB of RAM, and a Nvidia RTX 3070. It's got one 128GB hard drive in for the
OS, a 500GB SSD for games, and a 1TB HDD for everything else. On the desk, I have a dual monitor setup with one 4K monitor and a standard 1080p, both 27 inches. The keyboard I use is a Logitech G915X wireless, and I use a cheap ergonomic mouse I found on Amazon. I use AirPods for most of my audio needs when I'm not using speakers, but for audio editing and cutting, I do have a SteelSeries headset here. Which one it is, I've got no clue. Then for my microphone, I have an AT2020 USB connected to this arm, which is just a cheap one from Amazon. Then for camera, I have a Logitech C920. For videos where I'm not at my desk, such as this one, I shoot on my iPhone 16 Pro Max because Christ, they are almost as good as some high-end cameras now. For when I'm on the go, I have an M5 MacBook Air, which is one of the 2026 models of MacBook, so it's a relatively new piece of kit for me. It's the base model, so it has a 13-inch display, 10-core GPU, 8-core GPU, 16-core neural engine, 16GB of RAM, and 512GB of SSD storage. It's fantastic for making videos on the go. However, for streaming, I'm having input lag, which isn't helping. So I'm not even touching anything. Yeah, don't stream on a MacBook Air, folks. It doesn't work. So now the script is written, it's time for me to record the voiceover for the episode. I use Audacity to record my own voiceover and make the most of my standing desk that I bought last year. Standing up while doing voiceover allows me to speak louder more naturally as I'm not compressing my diaphragm. It also allows me to take deeper breaths so I can do longer lines in a single take, and opens up the throat for more control over my voice. Yes, I did go to stage school as a kid, how can you tell? A typical voiceover session for a 25-minute video can take up to 30 minutes to record. I have Audacity on the second screen and the script on the main screen, with my mic and myself facing the main screen so it feels more natural. This then leads on to another question from someone who wished to remain anonymous. How much of your script do you stick to, and are there any bits that are improvised? I tend to stick to 99% of the scripts I've written, but sometimes I may change some of the words that I feel as I'm saying them would be funnier. It usually depends on if I'm 100% happy with the line or not. If there's even a little bit of doubt in there that I'm not happy with it, I might try and come up with something on the fly. Typically, however, any bit where I walk away is usually something I've come up with on the fly. I've never written walk away from mic in any of my scripts. That is just something I have just done when I'm standing here doing VO. It's now time for the edit. This is probably the part of the process that I get asked the most about, as there is typically a lot going on in places in every video I release. In fact, another question that was asked from someone who also wished to stay anonymous was, how did you learn to edit and what do you edit on? I've been editing videos since 2013 when I edited my first cringe in Windows Movie Maker. Yes, seriously, title cards and everything. It was a dark time. Eventually, once I got a better PC, I moved over to Vegas Pro. And for anyone that used Vegas back then, I'm sure you can understand that it was a very frustrating software to use at times. But Vegas taught me a lot about editing. I learned how to do motion and keyframes in it. I learned basic audio control, multi-track editing, and over time, despite the fact that I was still making cringe, over time it taught me a lot of the foundations I needed to edit something somewhat decent. In 2016, I started using Premiere Pro as it's what my college tutors were training us on, and I thought that making videos on it as well would be good practice for when I had to edit any college work I made. Let me tell you, that switch was not easy. At that time, Vegas and Premiere were worlds apart. Premiere was and still is industry standard, whereas Vegas was primarily at the time used by online creators, so the toolkits they both had were vastly different. But with my college tutors teaching the basics of the software and YouTube tutorials filling in the gaps, it very quickly became more natural to use for me, and I still use it to this day. Now, would I recommend that you as a creator use Premiere? I think it heavily depends on what you do and how you want to create your videos. And also as well, like what platform you're using. Don't get me wrong, I love Premiere, but I do regularly feel like the feeling isn't mutual. And I personally do not agree with Adobe's business practices and subscription model with the cancellation charges and huge pushes for generative AI as part of the programs that just get in the way of doing basic edits. But unless I take a break to learn a new software, for me, it's best to stick with the devil I know. But you can also get similar results from programs such as DaVinci Resolve, which is the free version, Final Cut if you're on Mac, which is a one-time purchase for lifetime updates, or if you're planning on just doing basic cuts,
CapCut is a very good solution. But if you're okay with paying a monthly subscription, which is roughly £21 a month for me, then Premiere is exceptional and will serve you well once you're comfortable with it. I also used to use After Effects and did a lot of my motion in that, but since doing the War-Torn task, I've been able to do everything in Premiere that I used to do in After Effects a few years ago. Adobe, despite my issues with them, have really pushed Premiere in recent years as an all-in-one tool. I remember a time where masking wasn't possible in Premiere, and now it very much is, and it is just as good as After Effects. But Sam, how do you do this effect? How did you learn to edit this way? Can you show us how you do a video? Whoa. Well, no, there's no point really me showing you this. Everyone edits differently, and the way I edit things may not be the way that you want to edit things, or the way you feel comfortable editing things, or may not be the way you want to edit things based on your skill level. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to show you some bits, I'm just not going to show you the entire process from start to finish. First of all, if there is a certain effect or trick you'd like to learn, I can highly recommend searching how to do it on YouTube. I can recommend channels such as Premiere Gal, Gavin Herman, Finzar, Cinecom, and for more advanced things, Film Riot. Just a note on Cinecom, however, they announced the hiatus 2.5 years ago and haven't returned since. Some of their tutorials may be outdated slightly, as Adobe have moved around, depreciated or merged aspects of Premiere, but they're still a very good tool to have. Hello, Sam in the edit here. So, turns out Cinecom are still going, just on other channels, Premiere Basics and After Effects Basics, so definitely go check those out, they are fantastic. I will leave a link to all the channels mentioned in the description below. Secondly, how I edit the videos themselves is split into 3 stages. I split this up so I can think ahead primarily and start coming up with edit ideas as I'm going without stalling progress. Without these stages as well, I run the risk of falling into the trap I mentioned earlier of getting halfway through an edit and burning out. I used to cut the audio, put music, and do all the edits as I went at the same time, which meant there were a lot of videos that I didn't even finish editing the voiceover on because I spent so much time doing everything else before I ended up bailing out of it. Stage 1 of the edit is the skeleton edit. This is where I will cut the voiceover and insert the clips I put in the script, which is where the timestamping I mentioned earlier comes in incredibly handy. With this, I can go into Premiere and open up the VOD in the source window, enter the timestamp, and set the start point there and the end point where I want, and then drag that into the timeline, instead of dragging the full 3-hour VOD into the timeline and trying to find where that clip is. Trust me, knowing when and where your clips are and making notes of times will save you hours in the edit. I cannot stress this enough. The skeleton edit is also where I'll do any edits that are led on from clips, such as truly iconic, or of course any that are on top of clips, such as the mount run counters, the scoreboard for colour, or even just simple zooms into my phased or text gags. These will all be done in this stage. Also in this stage is where I'll do big edits. The colour montage, the anime intro, the news bulletin, the entire EP5 island section. This was all done in the skeleton edit, so that then in the next stage I don't have to worry about the big stuff. Because of all of this, this is by far the longest part of the editing process. Then the next stage is the B-roll stage. This is where I'll insert clips into the gaps that relate to what I'm talking about. This is also the stage where the minor edits will be done. These will be the bits where a random bit of text flies in. I show visuals for information I'm giving, a good example here being the Nashtar Companions explainer from EP5, or even the Filthy Bucket explainer from the same episode. Depending on how many minor edits I need to make, it can go by either pretty quickly or it can take an entire day. This stage is also the one where I'll pull the footage for the previously section and the outro card, and where I'll pull the list of channel members for the outro card from YouTube to put their names in. Lastly, stage 3 is the soundtracking stage, where I'll go through and put all the music in. This is of course the quickest bit, but it is vital, as videos without music suck. So getting the right music in at the right volume, the right cuts, and of course the right feel for that section in the video is incredibly important. For downloading game soundtracks, I highly recommend the website KH Insider, which has a massive database of music from different games. Lastly, once the video is exported, it's time to make the thumbnail. Personally for this, I use Photoshop, as once again it's the tool that I'm the most familiar with. But of course, that's another subscription. However, tools such as Canva are really good for making thumbnails. You have free software such as GIMP as well, which is a great alternative. Plus, if you're paying any subscriptions to Adobe, you have access to Adobe Express, which I used to use before coming back to Photoshop. And all of these alternatives are super easy to use and can produce some high quality thumbnails for you. Then the video gets uploaded, scheduled for release, and the processing on YouTube is checked because they have fucked it up many times. Then it's released to the public, and after that it's community management, so promoting it in the right places, making shorts or anything like TikToks about it, replying to comments is always a big one for me. I always make sure I try and reply to every single comment. This is a piece of advice I would actually give to people starting out with content creating. Reply to every single comment. It boosts you in the algorithm. But then from there it's primarily down to the algorithm to decide whether or not it wants to run with it that day or not. You can't control that. It will do what it wants to do. And then I typically take a few days off. Like I said before, I take the 4 days off from video production because, dear God, I need a rest. If I had any piece of advice to give anyone who wanted to start making content, whether or not it's YouTube or TikTok or streaming on Twitch, just do it. Put yourself out there and just start making content. It doesn't matter if you think you're not good enough, because you will always look back at your older stuff and think it's shit, and then you will just keep going and you'll learn as you go. To call back to Cat Icarus from earlier, in his video The Exhausting World of Making Cat Icarus, which yes, this is a direct inspiration from that video, this video me talking about how I make my stuff is directly inspired by that, Caddy gave some advice that I really took on board when I was thinking about coming back and making content. I'll play you the clip of the video here, but it's just talking about in general how you get better over time. Here it is.
It's like anything. You get better at guitar the more you play, you get better at driving the more you drive, you get better at riding a bike the more you ride a bike. You know, explaining how fast you should bend your knees and stiffen your ankles doesn't really do much. Just go with the flow, don't be afraid to experiment and make mistakes, and then eventually you'll look back and think, God, I was shit. But then give it another few years and you'll look back to yourself at that point and think, God, I was shit. Having a creative job is basically a never-ending loop of getting incrementally better while also shitting on yourself. So I really hope you're into that.
That piece of advice is something that I genuinely can't live without. It's such a fantastic piece of advice and a way of looking back at your older stuff, knowing that you have got better over time. And that's it, from start to finish, how I make the Water on Task. I want to take a moment to say thank you to every single one of you for being here and getting me to this incredible milestone. I never in my life even imagined we would get 100 subscribers, let alone 1,000. And it's something I don't take for granted at all. I am grateful every second of the day for this. I am excited to see what happens next and what comes from this, so I'm hoping I can bring you all along on the ride with me. So thank you all so much. Why WhatsApp? Here's to the next 1,000. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much.